So, hi all, welcome to Compliance Shorts but Lex Comply. Today we have another eminent speaker with us. We have Gautam Shahi, who is a partner in Dua Associates and expert in competition law. Welcome Gautam today, and we will be discussing with you some of the recent changes that has happened under the competition law. And if we can request you to enlighten our audience on this, please.
Thanks for having me, sir. It's a pleasure. What has happened is on 9th of September, certain notifications have come in, by which government has brought into effect a couple of things related to merger regulations as far as Competition Commission of India is concerned. Some of them were pursuant to the Amendment Bill of 2023, and some of them were brought through the new merger combination regulations that CCI has. Now, what are the major changes? The most important change is the transaction value thresholds have been introduced. What that essentially means is, till now, we were looking at the size of the parties involved in a transaction. So you used to look at the assets of the party, the turnover of the parties. Based on that, there were thresholds provided in the statute. If those thresholds were crossed, then the parties were required to go and take approval of the commission. But what CCI and the government realized was, as a result of this, there were many transactions wherein one of the parties was very small, let's say in India, but globally very important. Those transactions fell through the net. They were not caught on the radar. So they have introduced the transaction value threshold of 2,000 crores, which essentially means that if the value of the transaction is 2,000 crores and the local nexus requirements are met, then you must come and take approval of the Competition Commission of India. Now, what is local nexus requirements? Local nexus requirements here is in terms of the gross merchandise value. That is, if your gross merchandise value for the last 12 months before the transaction was INR 500 crores, or the target's turnover in India in the preceding financial year, or 10% or more of the global turnover was again 500 crores. And lastly, in case of a digital transaction, again, there are certain other thresholds provided. Apart from that, what we are looking at is, prior to this, and even now, there is something called a target exemption. So the target is very small, then you don't need to go and take approval of the Competition Commission of India. The present day thresholds are, if the turnover of the target is less than 1250 crores, and if 1450 crores, and if the assets of the target are less than 450 crores, then you don't need to go to the commission. Commission says these are small transactions, small target, you don't need to take approval of the commission. However, in case of transaction value thresholds, if you cross these thresholds, you can't take benefit of target exemption. Those are no longer applicable to you. Now, what is the value of the transaction? They have also defined this. They're looking at all kinds of considerations. They're not only saying, all right, if you're paying X amount of money for Y amount of shares, that is it. If there is any kind of consideration through any other mean, and that's a very open-ended definition that they have given. If any consideration is being given, then you must consider it as a transaction value. And if the 2,000 crore is crossed, you must come to us. They've gone a step further. And they have said, look, if you are unable to calculate the precise value of transaction value, then it will be assumed that the threshold is crossed and you must come and take approval of the commission. So they have thrown a very wide net. I think the major implication would be in the digital markets, where assets are lower. Okay, turnover may be high, but assets are generally lower. Okay, so those transactions will all get covered. So that is a major change. One important element of this is they have said, as per the regulations now, let's say you have already entered into an agreement 4 months back, and you were exempted under the target exemption. So you said, okay, no filing required. You were very happy. However, if you have not consummated a transaction, or you have partly consummated the transaction and some steps are still remaining, but you cross the transaction value threshold, now you must come to the commission, take its approval.
Okay.
So all transactions which are midway today must be reassessed to check whether you're crossing the transaction value thresholds or not. That's one. Next, what are the major change? There was this whole debate, if you see, for the last 12 years as to what is control. Because essentially, when we are looking at acquisitions, we are looking at change in control. So if there is a change in control happening, thresholds are crossed, you must come to the commission, take approval. The threshold point in terms of the idea, the logic behind it was that if the control is shifting in the market, then you must come and take CCI's approval. What is control? As you know, it's the most debated issue, even in securities law. In competition law also, it was a very hotly debated issue. There are n number of judgments where CCI has looked at an expansive view of it, and they said, look, even if negative control, you have a board seat, you have a director, you have some kind of negative veto right, all of them are controlled as per them. Finally, they have shifted to the concept of material influence.
Okay.
And they have incorporated it in the statute. So it's no longer coming from precedents, it's in the act itself, and they have said, look, the control, the term, the control means if you can exercise material influence on the other guy, you have control over the other person. They will treat it as control. And then, of course, you appreciate that, a lot of other questions come in. If my wife is a director of a company, do I influence material influence or not? So all those questions will have to be discussed and debated. Other issue was, the initial act, the statute was criticized quite a bit, was the definition of turnover was not very clear. Okay. So in practice, we used to just pick up their last audited accounts, look at the assets and turnover figures given there, forget about everything else, just focus on that. What they have done now is they have said, okay, yes, audited accounts as certified by a statutory auditor. So they put another threshold to it. And while certifying the threshold, the turnover, certain elements have to be excluded. These are intragroup sales, indirect taxes, trade discounts, and all amounts generated through SS or business from customers outside India. So essentially, exports are excluded as well now.
Exports are excluded.
That ensures that they are looking at you as you do business in India. So that is an interesting change. Next, when we were doing merger filings, and if CCI had a concern, there's a concept of modifications. That is, they say, all right, I'm acquiring 6 factories, let's say in Jharkhand, cement factory in Jharkhand. I'm the acquirer, I'm acquiring 6 factories. They assess it and they say, look, boss, your total size, market share in the state of Jharkhand is not something that I'm happy with. I have concerns over it. It's going a little too high. It may be not good for competition in the cement market in Jharkhand. So what I can do is, and previously also there was this concept where I could go and tell them modifications. Say, look, what I'll do is I will not buy 2 of these factories. I'm buying a company which has 6 factories. I will not buy 2 of those factories. But then the response was they used to come back and pass it on saying, no, this is not acceptable to us. This is how you'll modify. And they may put, okay, no, not only 2 factories, 3 factories you'll. Now there are 2 chances of modification. So I propose a modification. CCI can come back and say, no, I want this. And this is still in discussion phase. It's not a final order. I can still come back and say, all right, look, there is a problem here. I have a third option here. Why don't we consider that? Third option can be, look, I will not increase the prices of cement in Jharkhand for the next 5 years. So, there can be a larger discussion to and fro between parties in the commission where modifications can be decided before an approval is granted to a transaction. So that's in terms of processes. There are reduced timelines, significantly reduced timelines. Previously, if you remember, there used to be 180 days for Form 2, long form filing. For prima facie view, of course, 30 working days. Those are getting reduced almost by 50%. And there'll be, I don't know how they will do it because there was this recent report that in terms of economists, lawyers, and other, they have only 30 staff in commission. So while they have reduced timelines, the total number of requirements as per certain IIM reports is of 200 officers. They have only 30 odd officers.
Okay.
They have increasingly they have been imposed responsibility for checking profiteering cases under GST. So those responsibilities are being added. Timelines are being reduced. Let's see how this works out. There's also, under the combination regulation, there is a standstill obligation, which essentially means that if I do a filing, I need CCI's approval, I can't consummate any part of the transaction.
Okay.
before the approval of the commission. This is a standstill obligation on me.
Hmm.
However, these are creating problems in case of certain acquisitions when I'm acquiring certain shares on the market. There is an
Okay.
open offer I'm giving. So in those cases, parties were facing problems. What they have done is they've created an exemption for certain kind of transactions from standstill obligation, which essentially means these are transactions which involve an open offer, an acquisition of shares or securities through a series of transactions on the regulated stock exchange. So your that standstill obligation in there, you can keep buying those shares. However, the condition is you can't exercise any right. So while you may get the ownership of the shares, you can't exercise your rights till CCI approves the whole transaction. And lastly, this is something I'm sure a lot of people will not be happy about. The filing fees has been increased significantly. So as you know, there is a short form and the long form. Short form is also called Form 1. Long form is Form 2. So for short form, the filing fees has increased from 20 lakhs to 30 lakhs rupees. And for long form, the filing fees has gone from 65 lakhs to 90 lakhs. So these are the major changes.
Quite interesting. I think if we, Gautam, if we just summarize, I think what Competition Commission and the statutory authorities have tried to do is to create a right mix of ease of doing a business by way of trying to cut down the response time of the authorities, trying to allow you to do modifications because I think this there are various while you're doing M&A, there are a lot of terms and conditions, terms of the acquisitions, wherein you would love to modify to be part to fall within the ambit of a I would say, non-controlling business from the market perspective. So they have allowed further modifications in the scheme, wherein more engagement can happen, more you can make it more inclusive. I think another important thing is the definition has been clarified just to cut
Yes,
down that litigation part of it. Like turnover has been, I would say, to certain extent clarified. Uh, then I think the most important, which is the criteria. So it has been made from the perspective of the current Gen Z transactions, which is happening more in
yes,
the digital space, e-com
correct.
space, and the tech space, wherein the asset base is hardly there, but it is mostly the tech asset or the consumer base or the, I would say, the IPRs, which are valuing more. So that
Correct.
way, I think a lot of things are happening. But while in doing this, the thing is what I can hear of that while they are doing these changes, they have tried to also simplify the things to ease down. Like you told me that you can partly consummate the transaction, you may not give impact to it. So
Yes.
great, Gautam. We love to interact more because competition is something which is a huge subject, and there are a lot of aspects of the competition law. Thank you for being for giving your valuable time, and look forward to interact with you more. Thank you so much, Gautam. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, sir.
Thank you.